Watergate is usually remembered as a cover-up, a crime hidden from the public, a president caught lying. But what if secrecy was not the scandal? What if secrecy was the system? What if Watergate mattered not because power was abused in secret, but because secrecy had become a normal mode of governance? In the last episode, we argued that Watergate briefly made visible something larger than Richard Nixon, a modern state defined by procedures, bureaucracies, and insulation from democratic judgment. In this episode, we go deeper, not into personalities, not into psychology, but into secrecy itself as a governing principle. Secrecy is not an exception. In popular memory, secrecy appears as an emergency measure, a temporary deviation, a necessary evil. But in the mid-20th century, secrecy was no longer exceptional. It was institutional. Intelligence agencies were permanent, classification regimes expanded exponentially, emergency powers did not expire, oversight became internal. This was not accidental. Modern administration requires information control, and information control requires secrecy. By the time of Watergate, secrecy was no longer a response to crisis. It was how the system functioned. The plumbers were not an anomaly. They were an expression of a governing culture in which unofficial action, deniability, and compartmentalization were normal tools of statecraft. The scandal was not that rules were broken. The scandal was that rules had replaced judgment. One of the most dangerous transformations in modern governance is subtle. Responsibility becomes procedural. Decisions are no longer judged by their moral consequences, but by whether they followed proper channels, whether forms were filed, whether authorizations existed. This is how accountability dissolves without anyone explicitly abolishing it. Each actor performs a limited function. Each follows a protocol. Each defers responsibility upward or sideways. And the system moves forward without anyone fully owning its actions. Watergate was filled with people who believed they were acting responsibly. They were not monsters. They were administrators. Bureaucracy without conscience. The German sociologist Max Weber warned of this transformation long before Watergate. Weber understood bureaucracy as efficient, but also as morally dangerous. In a bureaucratic system, authority is impersonal. Obedience is owed to rules, not to conscience. Responsibility is fragmented across offices and procedures. The individual becomes a functionary. This is not tyranny in jackboots. It is domination through routine. When wrongdoing occurs, no one feels fully responsible. Everyone was only doing their job. Watergate exposed not merely criminal behavior, but a bureaucratic culture in which ethical judgment had been replaced by procedural compliance. For Karl Popper, this is where danger becomes systemic. Popper argued that free societies depend on criticism. Policies must be open to challenge. Errors must be exposed. Power must be falsifiable. But secrecy blocks criticism at the root. A classified decision cannot be questioned. A secret policy cannot be tested. An invisible action cannot be corrected. The problem is not that mistakes occur. The problem is that mistakes persist. Watergate was not revealed by the system correcting itself. It was revealed by leaks, journalists, and chance. A system that governs through secrecy does not learn. It entrenches. Friedrich Hayek helps us see why secrecy expands alongside administration. Hayek warned that centralized control requires centralized knowledge, but centralized knowledge is impossible without suppressing alternative perspectives. Classification does exactly this. It limits who may know, who may judge, who may object. In the name of managing complexity, the state narrows the field of permissible understanding. Secrecy is not neutral. It is a form of power. A system that claims to know enough to manage society must first silence those who complicate its vision. Watergate as a system glitch. Watergate is often remembered as a cleansing moment, a triumph of accountability. But structurally, little changed. The intelligence agencies survived, classification expanded, emergency logic remained intact. What changed was not the system, but its public relations. Safeguards were added, oversight committees formed, procedures refined. The managerial state did not retreat, it professionalized. The danger revealed by Watergate was never simply presidential corruption. It was the normalization of governance without moral responsibility. A system where secrecy is routine, where accountability is procedural, where power answers only to itself. When government becomes classified, when judgment becomes administrative, and when errors cannot be publicly challenged, democracy does not collapse. It is bypassed. In the next episode, we will examine how this logic evolves, how oversight becomes theater, how emergency becomes permanent, and how the managerial state learns not to govern less, but to govern more quietly. Because the most dangerous power is not the power that rules openly, but the power that no longer needs to explain itself.